May it please the court, counsel. Members of the jury, as I've said to you in voir dire, I think the service you bestow on your country is the greatest service other than serving in a time of war, what you're doing here today. It's what makes this system work is because of you. And I want to personally thank you and on behalf of myself and my client, Ron Coker, for your attention and for your deliberations that you'll be participating in today. It's at this time of the trial where the lawyers get up and will speak to you and argue the facts and the evidence and why we believe that the facts and the evidence support a verdict in favor of Mr. Coker. I want to talk to you a little bit about this ECDAC plate that was put into Mr. Coker's neck after his injuries. Now, I anticipate that the defense is going to get up here and try to divert your attention away from the true issues in this case, which are Z-Mark's liability and Dr. Hopp's negligence and his actions. But I don't want you to be fooled. I don't want you to be misled. I want you to understand that this ECDAC plate was not the cause of my client's injuries. You see, the problem with that argument is that Mr. Coker had already had a broken neck before that ECDAC plate went into his neck. You're also going to find that Z-Mark, by using this slip and slide, was the cause of Mr. Coker's injuries. The way they set this slip and slide up, the way they made the participants essentially dive head first under these ribbons, how they used their managers to throw water in a person's face. Don't lose your common sense. If someone is going to throw water in your face, especially a 5-gallon bucket of water, forcefully in your face, is it just not natural to turn your head? Z-Mark caused this injury, not ECDAC. You heard from Dr. Susan Gentry, an orthopedic surgeon in this case. She talked to you about the standard of care that's required by Dr. Hoppy. She told you that if you're going to put a plate in a person's neck, a plate designed to go into a person's neck, a plate designed to be in the environment in which it was made for, then you have to use reasonable care when you put it in. You've seen this exhibit. The surface of the ECDAC plate before it was put into my client's neck. He didn't get to choose the quality of this plate. This was put into his neck. Would it have been reasonable for Mr. Coker to have said, sure, put this plate in my neck, even though I know it's susceptible to corrosion and fatigue? I don't think that's reasonable. I don't think that's in fact, I think it's almost insulting to argue that point. This plate did not leave ECDAC in this condition. There's no evidence to that effect. And I ask you to use your common sense. There was nothing defective about that plate when it left ECDAC. This is, again, another picture, another exhibit. And it doesn't, with the human eye, can see the scratches throughout this plate. And you heard Dr. Gentry tell you, moisture, the heat of the body can enhance the problems with this plate. This is caused by Dr. Hoppe, and eventually it broke in conjunction with the movement that occurred. This plate was supposed to stabilize Mr. Coker's neck. Now let me talk to you a moment about the screws that were placed in this plate by Dr. Hoppe. You'll see here an animated X-ray where these screws were screwed into not bone, but soft tissue between the vertebrae columns. I submit to you, you'll see how this screw was coming out. And it was pulling out because Dr. Hoppe failed to give proper instructions to Mr. Coker. When Mr. Coker went back to his doctor, Dr. Hoppe, on October 14th, he said, "I'm not wearing the hard collar anymore." And Dr. Hoppe said, "Well, I'm disappointed in that, but you don't need it anymore. I'm okay with you not wearing it." The fusion for the bones that this plate was supposed to facilitate and enhance wasn't yet ready for this motion to occur. So what happened is you'll see these screws, which were not properly anchored to begin with, were pulling out. Again, nothing wrong with the plate. It's the way the plate was used in a defective plate when Dr. Hoppe scratched it. Here's what you're not supposed to do after the surgery, Ron. And let me give it to you in written instructions so that you understand that. Did Dr. Hoppe do that? I think you have evidence to show he did not do that. I think you have a conflict in the evidence that says Dr. Hoppe said, "Get back to your normal activities. Do what you want to do, except avoid any contact sports." So that means Ron says, "I'm going to start playing golf again." Dr. Hoppe says, "Okay, that's fine." And golf involves moving that neck. We'll couple that with the scratching of the ectac plate that Dr. Hoppe did, the improper stabilization of the plate with the screws, and Dr. Hoppe failing to give proper instructions. Does it make sense? Does it make sense that Ron Coker would want to be where he is today? That he wouldn't have done everything possible to help himself heal? It doesn't make sense. That plate was mutilated, and it's not hard to see its mutilation. Ron Coker wouldn't have chosen that plate. ECDAC wouldn't have sent that plate that way. This was a failure, not only on Z-Mart's part, but on Dr. Hoppe's part. And the failure resulted in the injury sustained by my client, Ron Coker. You've heard the testimony of Dr. Raffi, an engineer, a PhD, a metallurgist who specializes in the understanding and the science of metals. You heard Dr. Raffi tell you, this plate was the latest, best material for the job it was supposed to do. Stainless steel 316L material. But Dr. Hopi said, well, there could have been titanium used. Ron Coker didn't have a choice between titanium and stainless steel. You heard evidence that Dr. Hopi was in fact involved in a research project with this company. He chose that plate. But even choosing that plate, if it was the proper plate that should have been placed in his neck without those defects that Dr. Hopi created on that plate probably wouldn't have broke. In conjunction with the instructions that Dr. Hopi should have given Ron Coker. Dr. Raffi also told you that any small scratch in this plate would create a corrosive effect with the moisture. And over time, and I'm not talking 6 months, which is when this plate broke, the period in which it broke. I'm talking about over time. This is a plate designed to be in a person's body for a very long period of time, if not forever. In fact, it's still used worldwide today. Don't be fooled, members of the jury. Don't be fooled. Ron Coker is not asking for your sympathy. He's asking for to be made whole to the extent he can. Now, you can't give him the last 3 years back of his life. You can't give him his shattered dreams of being a golf professional. You can't give him the comfort from the pain and suffering that he experiences every day. You can't give him the relationship back that he is losing with his mom, his sisters, his father. You can't give him back that relationship he's missing with his teammates on the golf team. You can't give that back to him. Because if you could, we'd be asking for that, but you can't. And our system of justice is designed to compensate Ron for the injuries that were caused by Z-Marts and Dr. Hopi. When the lawyers are finished speaking, the judge is going to instruct you on the law and how to apply the law to the facts of this case. Did the defendants use reasonable care in this case? And if by the greater weight of the evidence you find that they did not use reasonable care, the only just and lawful verdict you must return is a verdict for Ron Coker. Members of the jury, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to sit down in a moment, but I just want to leave you with this. You can't come back here. Once it's done today, it's over. I'd ask when you go to deliberate, consider the significant injuries that my client, Ron Coker, a young man, 17 years old, faced, has to live with the rest of his life. And what it's going to take, those injuries and that depression